What kind of stuff happens at super fancy hotels that management doesn't want people knowing? Story 1. My wife claims that the amount of people who crap in the shower far exceeds however many people you think crap in a shower. Okay, but this is true, and I know this because I lived in an all-girls dorm in college and our floor lost bathroom privileges because girls were crapping in the shower and trying to force used tampons down the drains. People are disgusting and will continually surprise you with how nasty they can be. Why on earth would anyone willingly crap in the shower when a perfectly adequate toilet is nearby? Now I understand if someone suddenly comes down with uncontrollable diarrhea as a result of food poisoning and can't make it to the toilet, but to do this as a regular thing? I don't get it. Well, remind me to never take a shower at a party hotel again. Story 2. We turn a blind eye to drug dealers and prostitutes more often than you'd think. They hardly complain and usually prepay huge bonds happily. Also, we don't give a crap if you're having an affair. When I worked at a nice hotel, the affair one was brought up in training. Never mention a person being regular, and doubly don't mention anything about their partner or the fact that it's a different partner. That became a rule after some valet basically kickstarted a very nasty divorce with a wealthy guest. I work by a very cool, trendy hotel in Chicago, about a block away. Ubers often go to the hotel by accident instead of my workplace, assuming that I input the pickup address wrong or something. In the ensuing conversation after this happens, I've literally had like 5 different Uber drivers tell me essentially, "Oh yeah, sorry, trendy hotel doesn't want prostitutes inputting the hotel itself as the pickup address." So if I see an address that's close but not the same, I assume I'm picking up a prostitute at trendy hotel. Can confirm, worked for 2 5-star, 5-diamond resorts. A coworker stopped by the suite of a legendary director and producer who was eloping with his 4th wife. She came in and there was a mountain of cocaine on the coffee table. Hell, Diddy lit up a J in the Hummer on his way to the resort from the airport. Another colleague was the dedicated butler for a private villa, and the owner of the villa would always insist on going out for company during his stay. All of this stuff seems pretty on par for the course in fancy hotels. Story 3. We had one of the Baldwins beat up a hooker behind the building once. That was before I worked there, but people still talked about it. We had an entire wing of the hotel infested with bedbugs. They just moved through the walls from one room to the next. We waged a war of attrition that took years and cost a lot of money, but we never stopped renting the rooms. Sometimes drug addicts have money, or maybe better said, sometimes people with a lot of money have drug addictions. So maybe once a year or so you'd have someone move in and then end up staying for months, and you didn't know it was a problem until it was a problem. One day there's suddenly a lot of police cars in the parking lot, and it's something we're just not supposed to talk about and pretend never happened. We had one old guy, though, who was rich, divorced several times over. He just retired in the hotel. He had a room on the ground level right around the corner from the hotel bar. I don't know what he paid for it, but it wasn't cheap, and he furnished his own room. Everyone on staff knew his habits, knew his drink, knew when to leave him alone or when he wanted to chat. The funniest thing was, after he passed, he'd pre-booked his memorial at a totally different hotel. He liked his privacy, I guess. Rip Hal. Did the taxes for a ridiculously wealthy couple in Florida. Before they moved to a retirement community, they lived in a resort. I asked my boss to clarify. They lived like they spent a bunch of time there, right? Nope, lived. Paid, I think, $1.5 million total for the room and furnished it themselves. Clearwater, Florida. A very nice place for a room. Lived there for about 5 years and moved to a retirement community when the husband fell and broke his hip. One rich guy in my building threw dozens of heroin backies out his window every day, apparently unaware they were landing on the 7th floor outdoor patio of the same building. Couldn't tell what room they were coming from, but damn, just use the trash. Nobody is searching your trash, and I had to pick all that up every day before anyone else saw it. One hotel I worked at had a retired lady who lived there full time. Her son was a big exec somewhere, and she didn't like any of the retirement communities in the area, so he just put her up in a 4-star hotel. Really sweet old lady though. Also, we had an incident where someone beat up an S-worker. She came down to the lobby bloodied and crying. The police were called, and it turned out the guy was a federal judge from Germany who was in town for an international legal conference. The Baldwins are surely one messed up family. Story 4. My buddy was a dive instructor at a luxury resort on an island. One of the guests had a heart attack on the diving excursion before he got off the boat. The nearest doctor couldn't come for 24 hours, so they put the corpse in a guest room and cranked up the aircon. Of course, reception gave the key to the corpse room to a newly arrived honeymooning couple. They were greeted by the star of the weekend at Bernie's. My brother was going to propose during a vacation dive. As they came up after their first dive, he hadn't popped the question yet. They were greeted by emergency staff searching for a diver missing from their group. Turns out he did drown. They eventually recovered the body, and brother and girlfriend spent the next few hours detained by the police as they interviewed everyone who had been on the same boat. They're now happily married, but he did hold off on the proposal until the day after. This is something straight out of White Lotus. Story 5. My brother worked in an upscale hotel in Southern California. A morbidly obese guest sat on the toilet in his room, shattered it, got his femoral artery slashed by a chunk of a broken toilet, bled to death, and flooded his room when the water line ruptured. My brother found out about it from the maintenance guy who found the body. Management made sure no other guest ever knew, including the guests in the room below the death scene who called for maintenance because water was running down their wall. Jesus. Friends and I were staying at a B&B on the East Coast one summer. The friend's room suddenly had water pouring down the walls from above. Turns out the guy staying above them clogged the toilet, and the prick just kept flushing instead of getting a plunger. Now you've got me wondering. That reminds me of a story when I had to throw away a toilet at a local landfill. I was by myself and it was pouring down rain. I had an Eddie Bauer canvas jacket on, think like Carhartt. The toilet had a broken piece and jagged porcelain was sticking out. I hoisted it up and over the dumpster and kinda tossed it in. The jagged piece sliced my jacket from bottom to top. I still cringe thinking about what if I hadn't been wearing it. Probably would have bled out. Had that happened to a large patient once. We heard a big crash and he insisted he was fine and didn't need our help, but we forced the door open when we saw blood start running through the water out the door. Sorry man, no privacy for you. Ended up with several layers of stitches. I never realized until then how sharp porcelain toilet shards could be. All of these stories just unlocked a new fear in me, and I'm not even obese. Story 6. We take notes on your reservation profile. Everything from anniversary information to favorite cocktails and foods, add notes to pass along to other staff. My wife and I got married in 2009 and stayed a couple of nights in a hotel during our honeymoon. Cut to 10 years later, we decided to redo our honeymoon for our 10th anniversary, so we stayed in all the same hotels, etc. Big shout out to Hotel Andra in Seattle. When we got to our room, we had flowers and a bottle of champagne with a note about how thrilled they were we were spending our 10th anniversary there after honeymooning there as newlyweds. Turns out when we booked for our honeymoon, we told them, and they were able to figure out that 10 years later, we were there for our anniversary. If we redo this trip a third time, I will 100% make it a point to stay there again if it's still open. I work in finance and do the same thing with clients. We take notes on everything. If you mention that you have season tickets to the Yankees, your daughter goes to Cornell, and you just bought your first sailboat, then it will all go into your file. And the next time we talk, I'll likely find something to talk about with at least one of those things. It might be as simple as, hey, how's your daughter doing? I think I remember you saying she's at Cornell. Little things like that make a huge difference in client retention. I'm totally okay with this sort of information collection. Story 7. Did valet at an upscale hotel in SF the number of times I parked luxury vehicles with drugs haphazardly or precariously stowed in obvious places always blew me away. Not surprisingly, those guests were great tippers as they learned who to trust. So many escorts too. Always laughed at dudes who'd come into the restaurant for lunch with a new lady practically every day like he was showing off his catalog of women as if no one knew he paid for them all. They know you know and they don't care. Money is a commodity when you have enough of it. You bargain and trade with it. It's not about survival for them. Everything is a trinket that can be bought and sold, including time and people. They don't care that you know, because if you care, then you're just someone that doesn't get it, because you're poor. Your opinion doesn't matter. Not everyone is like that, but enough are. Not hotel related, but reminded me of something. I used to pick up and deliver cars for custom work, and I picked up this car dealer's personal ride once. It was a nice Lincoln Navigator, but it was filled with trash and stunk like dirty diapers. When I turned the car on, it was blasting gangster rap, so I turned it down and looked in the center console to see what other CDs he had. Loaded Glock? With the safety off, right there. This dude came off as totally normal too. Fancy hotels are sort of rich people's playgrounds. Story 8. Human trafficking became so bad that the company gave us training on looking out for it. There is a policy in place to knowingly cause you issues and pacify you. EX routine elevator maintenance during a busy period because the tech travels around and it is now or 3 weeks from now. The elevator did not have unforeseen issues. Professionals are the worst guests for partying and puking everywhere and pissing in halls and breaking things and screwing in public areas. Lawyers, doctors, teachers, in that order. Whenever they had conventions, extra staff were on the next day dealing with damage. I forgot to add overbooking as an example of dicking with people. We assumed not everyone would show up on a 100% occupancy night and booked more than we could hold. The rare time we did have everyone show, here is free stuff and a ride to X Hotel. We even had friendly agreements with neighboring competition to let each other know when we could take each other's overbookings. Can definitely confirm the second part of this. Used to work at a high-end lodge that hosted holiday parties and fancy dinners for software giants, and one exec peed all over a room. $13,000 in damage. We regularly had rich guys pull up in their Lamborghinis with a hooker. My favorite was the couple we had to essentially evict from their room due to smell and noise complaints. When we got in, there were dozens of designer shoeboxes and coke residue everywhere. The woman left with her foot hanging out the window as they drove away. Rich people are weird. Flew through Atlanta, one of the busiest airports in the world, with our teen daughter. The TSA agent asked her who she was and who we were. Spouse started to speak for her, but the agent just waited and watched. Daughter sorta giggled and said, "That's my dad, mom, sibling." My spouse was confused, can be a bit naive sometimes, sweet summer child, but I'm absolutely sure the agent was checking for trafficking, and I appreciate knowing there are people out there willing to be trained and trying to do something about it. Can confirm, as an event staff for a hotel, professionals are always worse than casuals. 40th birthday with an open bar. You'll be a handful, but most of you will crash out or Uber home fine. The lawyer celebrating anything will be an absolute crap show. Something will get broken, and oddly, yes, there will be coke residue in the bathroom. Also, seriously, teachers on an appreciation dinner will get blackout drunk and absolutely steal something. Also, for some reason, it's always the quinceañera party that we have the most issues with. No clue why so many people bring drugs to those or why someone gets stabbed, but both happen far too often. You all generally tip the best though, so I mean, I let you have it until the stabbing, then you all go home. When I worked at a movie theater before enlisting, the worst customers were not kids, not teenagers, not boomers. It was teachers that would come in and absolutely mess up the theater. They would sneak entire handfuls of vodka and drink the entire thing watching Bad Moms 2, puke, leaving their trash, smashing the glass bottles, everything. Worst part is that most of them were previously my teachers in middle school. Since we were in a small town, I know for sure that they were all drunk and drove home. Hey, teachers need to relieve stress too. Story 9. I only work as a housekeeper at a regular 4-star hotel, but probably about 25% of people either bleed or leave crap stains on the beds. It's truly atrocious how disgusting people are, especially when they know someone else is cleaning it up. Even the wealthier guests and the best tippers are the cleanest people. If someone fully crapped on the bed and used towels to wipe, left bodily fluids on the shower door, drank heavily and puked on the carpet in multiple places and clogged the toilet, that person will not tip at all, but the person who barely used the full bed and didn't use the shower at all and was super clean and polite, now that's a good tipper. Up until a school trip when I was probably 17, I didn't even know to tip the housekeeping staff. My family never did it, and we'd been to plenty of hotels. For this school trip, the teacher in charge reminded us on the bus about 10 minutes before we arrived at the hotel to please leave a tip for the housekeeper, and if we wanted to be sure it got to the folks actually cleaning the room, to leave it under the pillow with a nice note. We traveled down south when my kids were 12 and 10. On the last couple of days of a very eventful trip, they stayed in their room watching cartoons on TV and ordering room service. It was included in the package. They felt like grown-ups. Before we left, and on their own, they cleaned up the room, gathered up their money, about $48, and translated a note for the maid. Sorry for the stinky boy smell. I hope they used a good translator because it could have turned out to be something rather hilarious. Story 10. It's pretty common to have a dead guest. There's a standard procedure for it, and we take care of it quietly. I was once waiting for an elevator in a hotel pretty early in the morning. The doors opened, and reflexively I started to get on, but it was filled with EMTs, a stretcher, and the hotel's general manager. He politely suggested I wait for the next one. The patient had an oxygen mask on with some tubes leading somewhere. Later, I noticed that the ambulance pulled off without a siren and waited for a stoplight. I suspect he was dead all along, and they just made it look like he was unconscious and getting treatment. I had a woman call for a welfare check on her fiance. I've done tons of them, and it's usually stuff like their phone died or they're passed the hell out. In the rare times I've forced entry with an emergency key, they are usually just dead asleep. She tells me about his health issues, and she's worried because she hasn't heard from him in a while. I get to the room and knock, yell, nothing. Open the door and call out. Announce myself that I'm coming in, nothing. I see a CPAP machine on TV. Walk around the corner, and there's a rather obese dude in jeans with no shirt on his back, looking passed out on the bed. His phone is still in his hand. This is dangerous, because you're waking someone up in a room they feel is private, so I yell at him. Nothing. He doesn't look good. There's like dried spit around his mouth. I walk up to the bed and try to shake his shoulder. He's so cold. I worked in hotels for 14 years at an ice rink, and I have a fairly significant amount of first aid training. I've saved several people's lives in emergencies. I immediately called 911 while trying to check his airway. I can't open his jaw to check. It won't move. I can't find a pulse. I explained to them, and they asked me to do CPR. I told them I was pretty sure he was dead and had been for hours. They told me I didn't have to and could say no, but the procedure was to ask me to try until someone more qualified was there. I'm not letting someone die if there is some chance I can do something. So I got on the bed and gave chest compressions for what seemed like forever, but was probably about 5 to 7 minutes. EMT get there, and I jump off of him. They take one look at him, a couple of touches, and walk back out. We have to wait for the coroner. They tell me until it's pronounced, I can't say anything and take the information for his fiance. His fiance keeps calling me, asking for updates. I told her the EMTs were with him, but I gave him CPR, that I don't know anything more. It's finally called, and the EMTs ask me if I want them to tell her instead of me. I say please. They do, and she calls me again. She won't believe he's dead, losing her crap. I tell her I'm sorry, I did my best. I gave him CPR, he's gone. That has to be a tough job that absolutely no one signed up for. Story 11. I worked cooking at an ultra-exclusive resort in Utah, $3,000 to $12,000 a night. Nothing that exciting happened in my year there. I found a bottle in the Tallboy large fridge labeled Kristen Bell's breast milk do not use. Most celebrities were nice except for David Beckham. He specifically requested no staff members make eye contact with him. I had put in my 2 weeks and was really drunk on a day off and made a post on Facebook about how Gordon Ramsay was coming and I hoped he wasn't filming Kitchen Nightmares with us. I was fired within 24 hours, lol. I did get to cook fish tacos for him and his family though, and I heard he complimented the dinner kitchen crew directly, partially open kitchen, which is cool. Assuming this resort starts with an A, visit this hotel for lunch to check it out. I didn't belong there. Got to see some of the place though. The chef was upset because my kid wanted to substitute a side. The hosts were kind to us, but I could tell it was cringe to have even visited after we left. I wonder which celebrity stayed there. Eerie place too. The drive to the resort was wild. I've stayed at Assuming Amangiri. The staff gave zero craps what we did. We were told that the entire resort was low-key clothing optional, and we were drinking bottles of champagne naked in the hot tub, running around the spa with no clothes on, and the staff acted like it was par for the course, never letting eyes wander and just bringing more champagne. One of the masseuses was hot, and we all took off our panties at dinner in the dining room, and they brought us an envelope to put them in so that we could mail the pantygram to this masseuse. Then we wanted drugs, so the head chef found us drugs and delivered them to our room. Want a horseback ride to wherever? Horses have arrived. Yoga in the desert? Here's your mat. That place was amazing. Jimmy Kimmel was there, and we had just missed Justin Timberlake and Jessica Biel. This was like 10 years ago. Sounds like a hotel I need to stay at. Story 12. During housekeeping, hotels use different colored cloths to wipe your drinking glasses, cutlery, toilets, and sinks to avoid contamination. They just didn't bother separating these cloths after wiping and moving to the next room. I took a job last week as an attendant in a well-known hotel. I can confirm definitely not as clean or sanitary as you think. If it looks like it didn't get used, it's just wiped. Glasses are not replaced or even wiped or washed unless it's clear they've been used. If they're dirty, they just get washed in the bathroom sink with the same cloth used for dusting. Pillowcases don't get changed unless they're clearly dirty looking. The bathroom has 2 rags, one for the toilet and one for everything else, including the floor, which is last. 1 rag for dusting, which is used for around 15 rooms, just rinsed in between. We only ran the vacuum through 3 rooms out of 12. Otherwise, the carpet was checked and small items were picked up by hand. In one day, you're expected to clean 15 to 20 rooms. I had 5 to 10 minutes for breaks, and no time to sit. They had 5 attendants for 120 rooms that were filled every single day. A very busy hotel. The woman training me said she regularly works 14 to 16 days in a row as they're so short on cleaners. They expected you to work every single weekend and unpaid overtime. Most girls called in sick a lot on the weekends, so they worked super short. For $15 an hour, I quit after 1 day. When I was a housekeeper at a fairly upscale resort in the 90s, I was taught to use a fresh white guest towel to dry the drinking glasses, coffee mugs, coffee pot after spritzing them with an all-purpose cleaner and rinsing them in the bathroom sink. I'm fine with it, but my mom was horrified to learn that. I guess she always imagined that the hotel provided glasses fresh from the autoclave for each new guest. Our job involved not just washing or wiping surfaces, but drying them spot-free, so it simply didn't make sense for us to use the same cloth on multiple surfaces or rooms. Even if you wanted to, it'd be too damp to use. For cleaning dirty things, we had designated orange towels so as to not unnecessarily stain the white guest towels, but we had unlimited access to clean, dry towels of both colors and no penalty for generating more laundry. But this was one particular hotel at one particular time with unionized employees and a particular management direction, so I don't doubt that some other hotels can be pretty grody. In more recent years, I see a lot of hotels putting out individually wrapped disposable cups instead of reusable glasses and mugs, which avoids the problem entirely. Hotel housekeepers don't get appreciated enough. Even in upscale resorts, they aren't paid that much. Story 13. I used to work in accounts receivable for a couple of luxury hotels that were owned by the same LLC. We would open blocks of rooms for generic sports season about 8 months in advance. Due to high demand, these reservations had to be a 2-day, Friday-Saturday stay. Payment was made in full, $450 to $800 depending on room type. Refunds were available only if you cancel a month before the arrival date. When I first started in the position, I discovered $63,000 worth of reservations that had been canceled on time but were never refunded. I showed it to my manager, an absolutely incompetent woman who couldn't check in a guest if she needed to. She got back to me after discussing it with one of the owners. I can't remember how exactly she put it, but I was told to just forget the matter and to not mention it to anyone. I got a $500 cash Christmas bonus that year. Reminds me of narco soccer. Escobar's, Medellin, and other drug cartels took over the Colombian Football League in order to wash their money, i.e. sell 300 legitimate tickets in a $60,000 capacity stadium, but claimed it was a sellout. It then became intense competition for bragging rights among the cartels, and they actually started to invest heavily in their teams. This developed Colombian soccer and ushered in their golden age in the early 90s when Colombia was ranked the highest it has ever been before or since. There's a lot more to this story too. Check out the Two Escobars documentary if interested. A little bit isn't that on the customer for not following up. If someone held $500 from me for a hotel I canceled plenty of times, I'd be calling every day for months and threatening to go to Yelp. Not saying they shouldn't ethically do the right thing and return it, but part of that seems like a large number of people who don't care enough to get their money back. It's definitely money laundering though. $500 isn't nearly enough for silence. Story 14. Worked a while back at a 5-star/5-diamond resort in Vegas in room service. At that time, if you bought a bottle of booze for your room and didn't open it, including putting it out with your dishes, then it was resold. Was very frequent. I worked at a lodge that recycled table salad dressing container servings. When a customer ordered a big salad, they got a metal container of about 5 ounces of their dressing. Most people didn't use it all. It was too much. So when the table is bussed, the dressing container is brought back and the contents poured into a big gallon container of dressing. I was mortified when I was told to do this by an employee. To be certain, the owner explained to me that's how we do it here. So can you imagine what has happened to a container of blue cheese? Same with influencer. Beer is our bartering system. I could fill pools with the amount of beer I've given away. Got a maintenance issue? Go to the bar and have a drink with me. The room is not ready and you're mad to have a beer, etc. Events pay the bills, not guests. We could sell every room every night and still not hold a candle to event revenue. 40K weddings, 85K hospital party, 65K Shriners event, etc. When guests say we will close because their room money is what helps keep the lights on, we have a chuckle behind their back. Bedbugs. Larger hotels have better insurance to compensate for bedbugs. We won't say their name, but we will hand you over to a human resource who files a claim and starts a compensation package. As for when it happens, it can cost us between $2,500 and $5K to clear a room of them, and we treat the rooms on each side of the infected. Also, all hotels get them, but if a wealthy person gets them, we will spend tons of money to fix the issue, whereas small cheap hotels get people who just can't afford the treatment. The hotel has a nervous system. The fire panel is wires that run through the whole hotel, telling us if any water, fire, or tampering to the hotel's safety. How do I know you are smoking in your room? I didn't walk by, the fire panel told me. How did I know you tried to remove the detector and the fire panel? And why are you using steam to cover up smoke? The correct way would be to use a thick plastic closed hair cover, but no promises. But the panel knows much, and those housekeepers are also looking for evidence of smoke window seal smokers. Drugs. We don't care about high-end drugs. I have had an elitist drop a small bag of cocaine and I returned it to him in the bathroom. It's not worth our time to confront them or to get the police involved unless it's a full-on drug party that's out of control. We were recently kept awake until 1 a.m. at a hotel because of this. While at a hockey tournament, my son's coaches are rather strict, but that's not always the case with the other teams, especially after they've been effectively eliminated from the tournament. Many times it's a stay-and-play type of deal where all the teams are in the same few hotels, which is probably a terrible idea overall when the kids are tweens and teens. Kudos for doing a good job keeping the peace. Story 16. I worked in fancy hotels for over a decade. Some corporate-owned, some privately owned, and some Indian-owned. Just about anything you can imagine happens. I was in a group of managers of different properties who would meet weekly for drinks, and we would share. Well, you wouldn't believe this stuff, stories. We had a saying, don't ever say I have seen it all, or what's the worst that can happen. But, to be specific, fires, death, robbery, prostitution, sex in every nook and cranny, drunk people doing stupid stuff, important people doing stupid stuff and thinking their clout can make it go away. However, the best ones are really the most unwild and just mechanical failures. Things like fire systems going off, boiler busting, and water raining down an elevator all the way to the lobby. Scissor lifts fall through the floor because the dirt washed out under the foundation concrete. Probably the most scary thing is really just the turnover rate. The owners and corporate overlords are always trying to save a buck anywhere they can, and it's a shark-filled world. I have seen so many times where they would fire the managers of departments who were loyal and hardworking just to save $2K a year promoting someone who barely knew what to do. We ask the employees to deal with the unexpected all the time and never reward them, and it's just a game of how long will they put up with this crap versus do they believe they can do better versus will someone do it for less pay without them realizing it. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story to these that you would like to share with us, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and don't forget to subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again and see you next time.